Betting News Network. Thank you so much for stopping by with us right here on YouTube. That is Sukh. My name is Daniel Collins, a.k.a. Sweatpant Jesus, and we are continuing and finishing our NFL divisional preview roundup. We've already done the NFC and AFC North. We've done the NFC and AFC East. We've done the NFC and AFC West. And now, Sukh, we are finishing it off by going down south to talk about the AFC and the NFC South. So in this video, we're going to be breaking down both of those divisions, giving you guys a little bit of what happened with each individual team in the offseason, some moves that they made on their rosters, and some outlook on what we're looking like going into this season with some odds, some win totals, and who we think has an opportunity to take home both of these divisions. Thanks so much for stopping by right here, like I said, on the Betting News Network. Give us a follow if you haven't already on this video, and subscribe to the channel on YouTube for more NFL content as the season is right around the corner. We're recording this on August the 12th. We've already had week 1 of the preseason, so we had a little bit of some taste of some football, Sukh, and we've got a little bit more rolling forward as the season is right around the corner. But we're going to give you our last preview to get you guys ready to roll. And as I said, go watch the previous videos that we've done on the 3 other major parts of the United States and the other divisions across the AFC and the NFC. Before we jump into these 2 divisions, Sukh, how are we feeling? Ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, Bucks looked good in their first preseason game. Baker's hand is a little busted up, but we'll get there. We'll talk about that. And it feels good that we got through all of these divisional previews, and now we're going to even closer to some real, actual football.
Very soon. We will have some more football content, as I said, right here on YouTube to get you guys ready to start the season. And then when the season starts, we'll have weekly breakdowns for you guys every single week. So if you like what we're talking about, if you like the sound of our voices, give us a like and subscribe to the channel to get involved with all of our content. You can also go check out all of our divisional breakdowns if you like reading as well at bettingnews.com for all of our free scribbles over there as well. Now, before we jump into both of these divisions, we have to give a little disclaimer here. Because if this is your first time tuning into any of our content, first of all, thanks for being here. Second of all, Sukh is a massive Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, and I'm a massive Tennessee Titans fan. So we are going to be covering both of these divisions with a tiny bit of a grain of salt for you guys, as we are followers of one of these teams and one of these divisions. But we'll try to give you guys just the moves and kind of what we're seeing for these divisions with a little bit less color than we normally do. So I can't promise that I'm going to switch hats when we talk about the Titans, that's for sure. But it's going to be fun to go jump into these divisions and to finish it off and get us ready for football. So without further ado, let's jump straight in and talk about the AFC South. So the AFC South this year, both of these divisions as well are kind of more of the bottom feeders in the NFL right now. Both of them don't have spectacular competition. However, there should be some fun situations. We got a lot of rookies that are going to be playing a lot of substantial minutes for both of these teams, and that starts off in the AFC South. We're looking at the AFC South's divisional odds here. The Texans are the favorites to win this division at plus 100. The Jaguars are plus 300 as we sit here right now. The Colts plus 350, and then the Titans at the bottom of this division at plus 750. So you're getting some plus money on the favorite to win the division. So we're going to jump and talk about the Texans in just a second. But just before we talk about this, each individual team, what's your kind of outlook looking at this division as a whole?
Bad, not good. Obviously, I think the NFC South has an opportunity to be the better of the two, and definitely the AFC South. I have some negative feelings for that team in teal, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, there's not really a lot of excitement unless you're a fan, which of course I am. I'm going to watch a lot of AFC South games this year, and unfortunately, it's probably not going to be a fantastic watch. But hey, we've been surprised before. The Texans could be frisky this year in the AFC, as they have been the last few years. Maybe the Jags have something to say. But let's start off with the Texans. The over-under for the Texans this year is 9.5 wins. They were 10-7 last year. They obviously dismantled the Chargers in the wild card round, making the playoffs and winning the division. And then they lost to the eventual Super Bowl representatives from the AFC and the Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional round. The additions to this team, they brought in Christian Kirk to play wide receiver, still dealing with obviously Tank Dell on the shelf, dealing with that terrible injury that we saw last year. They brought in C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who unfortunately has gotten injured. So then they signed Jalen Mills to counterbalance that injury. They brought in Cam Robinson to play left tackle. And then they're keeping Derek Barnett and Mario Edwards on their defensive side of the football. They drafted Luther Burden, wide receiver from Missouri, who's everybody is very excited about, a really, really talented athlete. And then they also drafted Wyatt Mills in the second round for the offensive line from West Virginia. They lost Laramie Tunsil, who has moved on, who's not going to be at left tackle, which is why they brought in Cam Robinson. You're getting another year of C.J. Stroud, year 3. You're getting an opportunity now to see if the sophomore slump was just that, was the sophomore slump. And now we're going to get to see CJ kind of go back to maybe that rookie elite status quarterback we saw from him in year one. This team won the division the last 2 years. They're looking to win it 3 years in a row. They're plus 100 to win it this year. What's your kind of outlook on the Texans this year?
I think they have an opportunity to repeat what they did last year. Obviously, losing Tank hurts, but you add Chubb and Damian Pierce is still young, so you potentially have 3 usable backs. That's always a good thing in today's NFL. And then on the other side, you have Will Anderson, the former 3rd overall pick. If this guy takes another step and improves on the 11 sacks that he had last year and hits that Max Crosby, Micah Parsons level of defensive impact player, then look out. This team can repeat double-digit wins again. And obviously, it's like you said, it'll be interesting to see how CJ Stroud responds to a lot of people kind of being really on him for that regression, that sophomore slump. So it'll be interesting to see. And last point, Nico Collins, one of the best fantasy options last year. If he can continue to do that, it will be great.
Yeah, I did not mention Nick Chubb getting brought in as well to bolster that backfield. It's going to help out too because Joe Mixon's on the shelf right now as we record today. We'll see if he's ended up able to go for week 1. But that backfield did get bolstered. I think their success this year, their defense is very feisty, like you mentioned. D'Amico Ryans, obviously the head coach of this team, is obviously going to always lean that direction with his defensive background. But I think the success of this team is that we're going to talk about this with all these teams, but it's going to totally hinge upon the quarterback position. If CJ Stroud gets back to that rookie level elite status once again that we saw in year 1, then this team could compete to be one of the better teams, not only in the AFC South, but obviously in the entire AFC. Like, they have that much talent. Nico Collins is a top 5, top 3 wide receiver when totally healthy. Luther Burden could come in and really play substantial minutes for this team as well until Tank Dell comes back. So this team can compete. The offensive line was something that was a struggle last year. CJ Stroud got sacked a lot. So we'll see if that's something that gets rectified this year. And that's going to be one of the things that a lot of Texans fans are going to look out for because they saw CJ on his back a bunch last year. So I'm a little lower on this team just because I want to see it again from CJ as to what we saw last year. You got to kind of jump back up to status after you have that kind of down year. But they won 10 games. They won the division. They won a playoff game. So obviously vibes are high in Houston. They should repeat once again as the division winners this year, but we'll find out if one of these other teams has something to say when it comes down to it in December and January. So should be an interesting season in Houston. Let's keep it moving. Let's go on to the next team we're going to break down. The Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the Jaguars were 4-13 last year, so they were technically 3rd in the division, but they had the 2nd highest opportunity for their win total this year, as their total right now that we're looking at is 7.5 wins. Lots of changes obviously took place in Jacksonville. They basically cleaned house last year. James Gladstone was hired as the general manager, who is the youngest general manager in the history of the NFL at 34 years old. He's a year older than me, which is wild. 9 seasons with the Rams, so he was a part of a very successful franchise that won a Super Bowl, so he knows how to bring success to a new place. Young guy, we'll see what happens there. They brought in Liam Cohen, excuse me. Leonard Cohen is a singer, chat. They brought in Liam Cohen, the head coach, to head coach this team, the offensive coordinator from your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They brought in Grant Udinsky, the assistant. He will be the offensive coordinator, who was the assistant offensive coordinator in Minnesota for Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings. And then they have Anthony Campanile, who will be the defensive coordinator, who was the linebacker coach for the Green Bay Packers. So a completely new coaching staff in Jacksonville, which was needed. And they have obviously brought in some other pieces as well to help with that. So I wanted to start off with the coaching because this room completely revamped. The franchise revamped from the top down. And that's something that's kind of true throughout both of these divisions, to be honest. You've got Patrick McCarry, who got brought in to play inside offensive line. You got also Robert Hainsey, who got brought in to play center. They drafted, which was probably one of the biggest talking points we're going to talk about in a second, is they drafted Travis Hunter. They traded up to get him at the number 2 overall pick to play most likely both sides of the football, the Heisman Trophy winner. They lost Evan Ingram, who is no longer on this team, which could be a big loss for this team. Christian Kirk, we just talked about, is no longer on this team either. And Gabe Davis is no longer on this team too. That was a failed situation that they brought in Gabe, and that didn't work out as well. So lots of changes in Jacksonville. Another year of Trevor Lawrence looking to possibly put it together. A muddy backfield. We'll see if Liam Cohen can start to maybe press the right buttons here in his first head coaching job. What's your kind of takeaway, what we're going to see down in Duval?
Oh, so my father always taught me that if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. This Liam Cohen situation with the Bucs is 1 year OC in Tampa Bay. Obviously had the great success. We'll talk about that when we talk about the Bucs, but the way that he left was messy. It was gross. It was not in good faith. And honestly, the guy seems kind of slimy to me. So I honestly, I don't want to wish any ill will towards this team, but this is not a team that I'm going to be paying attention to. Obviously, I'll check out Travis Hunter. That's going to be exciting to see. Like, I've some guy that's going to play both sides of the football is a rarity, obviously. So that's the most interesting thing in Jacksonville. But I am still very salty with how things broke down with Liam Cohen and how he left and he wasn't answering his phone. And then his agent said he wasn't in Tampa. Then he was in Jacksonville. And like you said, this team has done a lot, but they have the same ownership and they're doing the same weird things that they've always done as a franchise. And that continued on last offseason and this offseason, and it's going to happen next offseason. So I'm not high on this team, and I don't think anybody should be.
I agree with you. And again, as I said to start this, I'm a Titans fan, so it's hard for me to kind of remove my bias a little bit in this situation. But just looking on paper, this is a ginormous year for Trevor Lawrence. Like, this is the year that we're going to find out if he's actually got the stuff to be a quote possible franchise quarterback, which is what he was drafted to be as the number one overall pick. I've never been a big believer of his. I know he's had flashes of greatness. He's been really good in stretches, but can't put it together. Obviously, was on the shelf injured for part of the year last year. I just am not a believer in this guy. And I think that this is one of those situations where we're going to find that out this year. If he goes out and he lights it up, I mean, he's got the weapons to do so. Like you said, Hunter, we'll see how Hunter fits into this situation, but we're really both very high on Brian Thomas Jr. and what we saw from him last year. This guy has a chance to be a superstar in the NFL. And if Lawrence can put it together with him, who knows? We'll see what happens. But
it just seems like this team will find a way to not win games,
which I'm very happy about. But yeah, as an overall, I think there's more negatives in my opinion than there are positives for this team. And I just do not see them winning 8 games. And I know their win total 7.5. I don't want to take the under necessarily, but I don't think this team's going to be very good. Like you said, first year head coach, maybe Liam Cohen presses the right buttons, but I don't know.
How many OCs have we seen that get elevated to the position and it just becomes too much? It's a different discipline. It's a different position. It's a lot of responsibility. You have to be a leader of men. And honestly, I don't like Cohen. I don't like him.
Yeah. Hard for you to remove your bias a tiny bit too. Well, we're going to talk about it when we get to the Titans as well. A converted offensive coordinator that is now in a head coaching position in year 2, which we'll see how that plays out. But it is definitely something that's a different skill set. We'll see how it plays out for the Jacksonville Jaguars this year. We can finish this off talking about Travis Hunter, because it has been reported, and as we said again on August 12th recording this, that he is going to play both sides of the football. He is the quote-unquote one of the starting wide receivers on the depth chart right now, and he's the backup cornerback. So he's getting snaps on both sides of the ball. Liam Cohen has come out and said that he has flashed and looked very comfortable playing corner, and its wide receiver has taken him a little bit more time to get used to, but they're looking to utilize him on both sides of the ball. Now, however you feel about that is up to you, but that's what they're going to do. They're going to play him on both sides. He wants to play both sides because that's what he's always done his entire career since he was a kid. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't really know how it's going to happen. I don't know how he's going to affect the game offensively. I could definitely see him having some impact defensively immediately. But we'll see. It's going to be exciting to watch him play. And obviously, like I said, I'm really high on Brian Thomas Jr. I think Brain's going to be really good for this team once again this year, even if they don't win a lot of football games. So interesting to see what happens in South Florida. We'll find out lots of moving pieces and moving parts. We'll see if it pays off for what the Jacksonville Jaguars did in the offseason going into this year. Now, let's swing and talk about the third team in this division. Actually finished second in the Divisional last year, but neither one of us are very high on this team either this year, the Indianapolis Colts. 8-9 last year. They also have the same win total as the Jacksonville Jaguars, over under a 7.5 right now. The additions, so Jim Irsay passes away. So his daughter, Carly Irsay Gordon, will take over as the head of football operations. So that's more of an organizational thing. Lou Anarumo was brought in to play defensive coordinator from the Cincinnati Bengals. You obviously have Shane Steichen still being the head coach of this team. And Jim Bob Cooter is going to be the offensive coordinator once again as well. So not a lot of changes offensively. Brought in Anarumo to kind of help out on that defensive end with what he brings with his schemes from those days in Cincinnati and how it kind of ended poorly his last year there. Brought in some nice pieces on defense, especially Travarius Ward got brought over from the Niners to play corner. Cameron Bynum got brought over from the Vikings to play safety. Daniel Jones got brought in to play quarterback, which we'll talk about the quarterback position in a minute. And then Khalil Herbert got brought in to bolster that backfield behind Jonathan Taylor. So those are the additions that kind of move the needle for this team. Losses, they lost Ryan Kelly, the offensive lineman, and they lost Will Fries, offensive lineman. This unit was one of the best in the NFL last year. They lost 2 massive cornerstone pieces. We'll find out how they move on from that on the offensive line side. And then they lost Gardner Minshew as well, who is now not going to be the backup quarterback anymore for this team. My opinion of this team is maybe the lowest of any team in this entire division, and purely off the fact what we're going to talk about now with the quarterback battle. So you got Daniel Jones. You have year 3 technically of Anthony Richardson. We're going to find out what he's got. He got hurt in the first preseason game, which we just watched last weekend. Apparently, it's come out that he just dislocated his finger. It's going to be all right. He's going to be fine. He's probably going to play in the second preseason game. But this is the old adage. If you got 2 quarterbacks, you got no quarterbacks. And I know Shane Steichen's probably just trying to figure it out on who he wants to roll with in week 1. But I really think they want Anthony Richardson to win this job. And I don't know if that's a good thing for the Colts right now, because I don't believe in Anthony Richardson either. So I'm not very high on this team. They got a nice wide receiver room. You got Michael Pittman. You got Josh Downs, who was really good last year. You got Alec Burke, who I think is very good as well. Or not Alec Burke, Alec Pierce, excuse me. I like this wide receiver room. I think they've got good weapons outside. Jonathan Taylor is obviously one of the best running backs in football. I just don't think that they're going to get it done from the quarterback position. I don't trust either one of these guys, and I think that this team quite possibly could be the worst team in this entire division this year. What do you think about the Colts?
100%. Anthony Richardson became just the 4th quarterback since 1970 to lead the NFL in yards per completion, while also being dead last in completion percentage. His 47.7% completion percentage last year is the lowest any quarterback has had for a full season since Tim Tebow was still in the league in 2011. That just tells me that this guy has all of the raw talent in the world. Who knows? Maybe this should have been a situation where Anthony Richardson was drafted at that 4th overall spot, and then maybe he spent 3-4 years behind a very veteran quarterback and learned the game. Because right now he's been thrown to the Lions and the Lions won. And I don't know if he's going to be a franchise quarterback after all of this, because now you getting into the realm where like you're going to be in your own head. You don't know if you can actually do it. Everybody is saying that you can't do it. And playing quarterback in the NFL is very, very mental. And this guy is unfortunately has his back up against the wall in just his first few years in the league.
He's still a young guy, 23 years old. So he's still obviously got a lot left in the tank to prove. Huge, huge athlete. I mean, the guy's ginormous, very fast, very twitchy when he runs, even though he's a big guy. And he can throw the ball a mile. Like he can throw a 60-yard bomb.
Bazooka for an arm.
Yes, for sure. And everybody's seen all the plays of him making these huge deep balls, and it looks so pretty and everything like that. But when you really watch this team, especially when he's running the ship, they just cannot move the ball offensively. He cannot create. He can't hit the simple stuff. And in the NFL, to be a starting level NFL quarterback, a competent starting level NFL quarterback, to get you in situations to win football games, you have to complete the easy stuff. It's great you can throw the ball 60 yards. It's great you can hit those crazy flashy plays. But if you don't do the easy stuff, you're not going to win football games. And that's the problem with what he struggles with. You read off the completion percentage. I watched it so much last year. Not as a fan, but I've seen this team play a lot, and he just misses so many of those baby throws that you have to make in the NFL. You got to complete those 5-yard digs. You got to go get yourself 4 yards on first down. Otherwise, you're going to be up against the sticks, and that's not how you win. It's not going to get any better, though, with Daniel Jones. We've seen Daniel Jones. We know what Daniel Jones is. I like Daniel Jones. I think he gets a lot of slack, not because we share a name, but I think that he's actually a pretty decent quarterback. He just got thrown into a situation where people were putting him next to the money he was getting paid, and it didn't make sense. You know, he's gotten his team to he's gotten a team to the playoffs before. So you got to add that in. So maybe it gets to the point where Shane Steichen has to make the decision and just go, listen, this guy gives us the best chance to win. And I don't think that's a good situation either. So I don't like the quarterback room here. I think this team could end up losing quite a few games and then end up being one of the bottom 5 teams in the NFL. And maybe the last part of the season, they're trying to get that number 1 overall pick because they want to get a new quarterback. So not high on this team. Jonathan Taylor should be fun. Like I said, the pass catchers are good. So maybe they'll have some fun up there too for some fantasy. If like Josh Downs was really good last year, Michael Pittman Jr. is obviously a great talent too. So they got some pieces. They got some weapons. Really good defensive line. DeForest Buckner is awesome. That guy is a beast. So they do have some pieces, but without the quarterback, without that guy, it's going to be tough in Indianapolis this year. So we shall see what happens and breaks down in Indy. And let's move on and talk about the last team in this division, the bottom feeders last year, the worst team in football, the Tennessee Titans, 3-14 last year. They were the number 1 overall pick in the draft, kind of luckily, to be honest. But the over-under for this team this year is 5.5. Now, a lot of additions. Once again, they fired general manager Rand Carthon last year and hired Mike Morganzi, brought him over from the Kansas City Chiefs side of things. The offensive and defensive coordinators, though, stayed the same. They're rolling back with Nick Holtz. They're also rolling with Brian Callahan again. And I wanted to say Mike Vrabel because I'm always going to feel that way. But brought in Brian Callahan again as the head coach for year 2. And then they obviously have Denard Wilson as their defensive coordinator, who was actually very good last year for the Tennessee Titans. Lots of new pieces got brought in too. They brought in Dan Moore, the left tackle from the Steelers, to bolster the offensive line. Kevin Zeitler as well got brought in from the Lions to play guard. Van Jefferson and Tyler Lockett got brought into the wide receiver room to help bolster that room. And then Xavier Woods got brought in to play safety, and Cody Barton got brought in to play linebacker for some nice veteran pieces there. They drafted Cam Ward with the number 1 overall pick to play quarterback for this team. They also drafted Femi Oladejo in the 2nd round, a kind of outside linebacker, possibly defensive end, rush the passer type of player that is a little bit more of a project, but a really freak athlete. And then they drafted the really talented safety from Penn State, Kevin Winston Jr., who was coming off an ACL injury. A lot of people thought that he'd get drafted in the 1st round if he wouldn't have gotten hurt last year. So nice draft class on paper. We'll see if that ends up transitioning and actually playing a part on the field for the Titans this year. Losses. Will Levis is no longer the starting quarterback for this team. He's not going to be with the team for the entire season as he got shoulder surgery. He wasn't going to be starting for this team regardless. So, sayonara, thank you, Will Levis. Harold Landry moved on the outside, is now going to play in New England, going back and playing with Mike Vrabel. Chidobe Awuzie moved on, is not going to play corner. That never really worked out on the outside with this team as well. And then Kenneth Murray, the linebacker, also moved on in the NFL too. I liked Kenneth Murray last year, but they decided to go a different direction. Overall, I'll let you go first with this team. What is your kind of opinion of the Tennessee Titans this year?
I just wrote in my notes, Daniel has this covered. I don't have extensive thoughts. I will say, though, that watching the highlights of Ward's first preseason game, I will say he throws that ball well. It looks pretty when it leaves his hand. And in his pressers, I like the way he answers questions. I've been seeing you post all over the timeline kind of how he's been handling the media and how he's already taken a leadership role with his teammates. Kind of a guy that talks beyond his years, mature for his age, seems like. So obviously I'm high on Cam Ward. I want to see what he can do, but we'll see.
I'll keep it short and sweet because I've talked a lot about this team. I don't want you guys to think I'm going to give you all of my rosy-colored glasses about the Tennessee Titans this year. I think the Titans have a chance to win 6 or 7 games. I don't think this team's going to be very good again. I do not think that they're going to be great, but the reason why this team lost so many games last year was because Will Levis just would put this team in the worst possible position or make 2 or 3 just game-changing bad plays that lose you football games. And that's why they only won 3 of them. And it started in week 1 against the Bears last year. You guys listening to this probably can see in your head all the different Will Levis memes from last year. And that was the reason why this team lost a lot of games, because technically on paper, this defense was the number 2 overall defense in the NFL last year. Now, a lot of that had to do with atrocious special teams play and also the fact that there was a bunch of turnovers. So the defense was usually put their back up against the wall. So they didn't have to allow a lot of yards, but they allowed a bunch of points because they were in bad positions. It's a weird team. I think Cam Ward's very exciting. I love Calvin Ridley this year. I think him and Cam Ward and Calvin Ridley's connection is going to be something that you're going to want to watch on the weekly basis. Drafting Calvin Ridley is something in fantasy. If you guys are listening to this and you like playing fantasy football, really like what we're going to see from Calvin Ridley last year, who had 1,000 yards on a terrible offense. So I think he has a chance to be better this year. The offensive line got rebolstered, which was also awful last year. So hopefully Cam Ward has time to be able to play the position appropriately. And if he does that and he develops, who knows, maybe this team is decent, but most likely, just to be a little more tempered, this team is not going to be very good again. Their cornerback room is very bad. L'Jarius Sneed is obviously still on the shelf. We don't know when he's coming back. I like Jarvis Brownlee Jr., but there's a lot of corners on this team, a bunch of no names that they're kind of just hoping play well, and that's not a good recipe in today's NFL. So I'm a little worried about that. And if this team's getting torched by the other quarterbacks, this could be a long season again in Tennessee. So I'm not overly high on the Titans. Do I think they can compete? Yes. Do I think they look better than last year? Yes. Does that matter and how they do this year? Probably not. So we got through this terrible division. The AFC South should be interesting, even if you're a fan of one of these teams. If you're not, you're probably looking at drafting some of these players maybe to make some plays on your fantasy team, but otherwise you're not going to be tuning into a lot of these games. Quick last takeaways from the AFC South before we move and talk about the NFC South. One team that you think can run away with it? You think it's the Texans again?
Oh, it has to be the Texans. I think that if the Texans don't come away on top of this division, then you really do kind of question if CJ Stroud is a franchise cornerstone quarterback. This is not a good division.
That is the take that I can totally stand with. I think the Texans should win this division. On paper, they should totally win this division. They should win it very handily. However, for the value from a betting perspective, the Titans at plus 750 to win this division is a great sprinkle for me. I know you're laughing at me, but we just talked about how bad the Colts are. We talked about how bad the Jags are. And if the Texans do slip up, I think 9 wins wins you this division.
I could see that.
And like, I just don't see the Titans as being that much worse than the Colts and the Jags. So I think for the value, there's value on the Titans. Do I think they're going to win the division? No, the Texans should win this division, but we'll find out for the value. All right, let's swing and talk about the NFC South. Let's go to the other division and let Sukh talk about his favorite Tampa Bay Buccaneers and so much more. So stick around. That was the conclusion of the AFC South. Now let's jump to the NFC South and let Sukh talk a little bit about his favorite team. This should be a fun division, a little bit more fun than the AFC South. We'll find out if that is the case. But just before we do that, just as a reminder, give us a follow and a subscribe right here on the channel on Betting News. We'll be covering a lot of the NFL and so much more across the rest of the sports slate. Give us a follow and check out all of our other content at YouTube and on bettingnews.com. Sukh, let's jump straight into it. Your Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the divisional odds aspect of things, plus 100 to win the division once again. The Falcons, plus 225 directly below them. The Panthers, plus 400. And then those lowly Saints, plus 1,100. The Saints come and marching in at the very end of this list as well. Before we start jumping in and talking about this division as a whole and kind of circling in on the individual teams, without your Bucs fandom taking over, what is your thoughts on this division?
My Bucs fandom has to take over. They're going for their 5th straight division title here. I think that the Falcons and Panthers definitely have an opportunity to snatch this division. We'll talk about that each individually when we get to each team. But yeah, it's the Bucs division to lose once again. It seems like the Bucs have the most weapons, the most complete team. And definitely if they fail to secure top spot in this division, I would see that as a giant failure for them as an organization.
This is definitely the Bucs division to lose. This team is very, very good on paper, defensively, obviously, as well, but offensively too, with Baker Mayfield once again looking to pull the strings in all the right ways. You got Mike Evans once again. You got Chris Godwin coming back. We'll talk about some of the other pieces as well. But let's jump and start talking straight about this Buccaneers team. 10-7 last year. Division winners, as you mentioned. They lost to the Commanders, though, in the wild card round because they were a wild card team with only that 10-7 record. The over-under this year is set at 9.5. The additions, we got a new offensive coordinator after we just talked about the whole Liam Cohen situation. Josh Grizzard has come in, past team coordinator previously for the team, so he's had some continuity there. Hassan Reddick also got brought in to play on the defensive side of the ball, which should be very exciting. They drafted Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, a wide receiver, very talented guy, looking like he's going to make an immediate impact as well. And then they also drafted Benjamin Morrison, the cornerback from Notre Dame. Losses, they lost Robert Hainsey, the center. KJ Britt obviously is not going to be on this team anymore as well from the linebacker position. Mike Edwards, the safety, and Carlton Davis in the cornerback on the defense on the backside are not going to be there as well. So as you mentioned, this team should probably win this division again. I'll lead off since you already talked a little bit about them. I like this team once again. I think Baker's going to be awesome once again this year. I think Mike Evans is going to rinse and repeat. Bucky Irving is looking to take another leap this year in the backfield. Your darling from last year. I think this team's going to be good. Todd Bowles is a fantastic coach. He obviously knows how to pull all the right strings defensively, one of the most blitzing defensive minds in all of football. This team's going to be aggressive. This team's going to want to be gritty and win you a lot of games down in Tampa again. I think there could be some other teams that maybe have something to say, but the plus 100 for them to win the division looks very tasty at the plus money sign.
100%. And last year, Baker Mayfield did something that was only done for the 4th time. He joined the rare heir of Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and Joe Burrow as the 4th player to ever throw 41 touchdowns on 70% completion. I know Cohen was brought in, and I know he was the darling, and I know everything that happened with that offense is why he got that job in Jacksonville, but Baker is going to make it work with the new guy. I think that no matter what, there's enough options here, enough weapons in this backfield and in the wide receiver room that they're going to make moves. And I'm so high on this team, SPJ, because the vibes are just so good. from GM to head coach, they talk about how we only want good people in this locker room. And part of being a good football player includes being a good person. So when Baker hurt his hand in preseason, who did they go sign? Our boy Teddy Bridgewater, who was so unceremoniously suspended from his high school team for giving improper benefits to his players. And when he was doing his presser for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he kind of talked about that. First and foremost, in his life, he's a father. And some of those players on that high school team, they became his sons. So he really just wanted to help out each person on that team. And now that he's on our roster, it's really good to see, because, you just want to be around guys like that just want to put out all good vibes in the world. And I think that the Bucs are going to ride those good vibes to the top of the division.
Culture. Culture. You got to have a locker room that believes in the culture. And that is what we see in Tampa Bay. That's why they've won the division so many years, obviously back when Tom Brady was there, and now with old Baker. But
they got the upgrade.
They bought in to the culture, and you've got guys, like you said, that bring in the vibes, and it helps when you win, obviously. So we shall see if that repeats itself once again this year. But let's go and talk about some of the other teams that could maybe push them at the top of this division. Let's go to the Atlanta Falcons next. The Dirty Birds were 8-9 last year. The over-under for them this year is 7-5. The additions, they brought in Leonard Floyd to play on the edge, which was a nice piece to bring in as well. They also have Divine Diablo to play linebacker for this team, who's going to start. Morgan Fox to play defensive end as well. They drafted 2 defensive ends, 2 edges in the first round of the draft last year. Jalon Walker from Georgia, one of the best either stand-up outside linebackers or rushing the passer, however they want to utilize him. And then James Pierce Jr., who's the best hand-in-the-dirt defensive end from Tennessee. So 2 SEC dogs that are coming in to play on this defense. Already a pretty good defense as well. They obviously lost Grady Jarrett, the defensive lineman, so they needed a little bit of reinforcements on that line. But this team has a lot of weapons. We've talked about them a lot. Obviously, the whole Kirk Cousins thing didn't work out. They drafted Michael Penix last year, ended up being one of the biggest talking points of draft day one, and then he ended up playing a lot of games for them to finish out the season. Looked pretty decent. Now we're getting a full season of Michael Penix Jr. slinging the rock for the Falcons. We're both very high on Drake London, on what he can do for this team. Bijan Robinson is one of the best, could be one of the best, if not the best, running backs in football this year. And is it going to be Kyle Pitts' year again? We're going to find out. But I know you probably feel a little differently about this team. I like this team this year. I don't know if they're going to get over their win total necessarily, but I think the Falcons are going to be very fun to watch offensively if Penix can put it together in Atlanta this year.
Yeah, I definitely think that I watched a lot of them last year. I actually thought that they were a fun club to watch. And like you said, a lot of their additions were on the defensive side of the football. The last few years, they've been one of the worst teams at sacking opposing quarterbacks, creates no pressure. They were one of the worst teams in the NFL last year on third down conversion rate against their opponents. And hopefully they can fix all that by drafting 2 guys, like you said, that are elite talents, guys that can put pressure on the football, can make a quarterback run out of that pocket. If they didn't have 2 of those bad overtime losses and some of those really bad third downs, they could have been in the playoffs. So I definitely am higher on this team than some people are. I think that they have great options offensively. I know a lot of people are doubting Penix, but he looked great. We talked about it in a few of the other videos. For some reason, I don't know why people are discounting what he did at the end of last year. So I actually think this Falcons team, their over on their win total is definitely in play.
Yep, 7.5 feels a little low from what we saw. I mean, this team won 8 games last year, and as you mentioned, they threw away a bunch of games with just bad situational things that went down at the end of games or just unlucky bounces of the football. We talked about this just before we move on and talk about the next team. I think Drake London's going to be incredible this year. If you guys are listening to this and you're fantasy players, like Drake London is definitely going to be targeted so much in this offense. He was the most targeted wide receiver for all of Michael Penix's last 4 or 5 starts to finish off the year last year by a lot. And I think that we're going to see probably the same again from him this year. I hate to say it too, but Kyle Pitts probably going to have a good season as well. And obviously Bijan Robinson is one of the best, like I said, or possibly the best running back in football if he breaks out once again this year. So lots of pieces on this offense. If Penix can pull the strings correctly, could be some fun in Atlanta this year. Could be knocking on the door in Tampa Bay. We shall find out. But definitely a team that could compete to win the division and also maybe then sneak into the playoffs by winning the wild card, depending on how things shake out. So pretty high on the Atlanta Falcons. Let's move to the bottom 2 teams in this division. Another team that you're pretty high on as well. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on them this year. Carolina Panthers, 5-12 last year, not great. Bryce Young obviously got benched, got brought back, looked great when he got brought back. So maybe things are starting to turn around for the former overall number 1 pick. Over-under set at 6.5 wins. Now, they brought in Brad Idzik to be the offensive coordinator, who you know well as a former Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the wide receivers coach. They brought in Trayvon Moehrig from the Raiders to play safety. They brought in Tershawn Wharton to play defensive line, Bobby Brown to play defensive tackle, and they brought in Rico Dowdle to help with Chuba Hubbard in the backfield for this team, possibly even play over Chuba Hubbard. We'll see. I doubt it, but probably more of a split situation there. They drafted McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona. A lot of people very high on this guy. We'll see how he plays out this year. We'll talk about that in a second. Nick Skirton in the second round, the edge from Texas A&M, also got brought into this team. They lost Johnny Hecker, which I don't usually mention punters in this situation, but Johnny Hecker was an all-pro punter, and that does matter in special teams. Shaq Thompson also left.
The Bucs last year.
Sure, ask the Titans as well. We both can talk about that. Shaq Thompson also went to another team, and Miles Sanders is no longer in the backfield for this team either. So, another year of Dave Canales run the ship. Another year of Bryce Young being the presumed number 1 starter for this team from the beginning. We'll see if it plays out, hopefully, for the whole season. Carolina Panthers fans are desperate for that to be the case. He looked really, really good to finish the year last year. Very good, like borderline elite with the way he played to finish off the year. Now, it didn't matter so much because they were bad at that point and they didn't need to win games. But the reason why I like this team before you talk about them is this wide receiver room is just stacked, man. They have 6 bona fide guys who I think on any other roster could push for a starting job. You've got Adam Thielen, you've got McMillan, the rookie, you've got Xavier Legette, who's been talked about, who might get passed over by Jalen Coker, who's technically the 3rd, 4th, or 5th wide receiver on this roster. You've got Hunter Renfrow, who's come in to play in this on this roster as well. And I can't remember the 6th guy off the top of my head, but he's also a starting level wide receiver in the NFL too. So you got a bunch of guys who can catch passes from Bryce Young. And Canales, we know, is a offensive mind who can definitely press all the right buttons, especially with quarterbacks. So could be some fun down in Carolina this year. What do you think about the Panthers?
Yeah, last year to end off the year, Bryce Young was fantastic. After that 0-2 start, you bring in the Ginger, he comes in, and then you go back to Bryce. And Bryce was fantastic in those final 3 games. He threw 7 touchdowns. He ran in 3 more, and he did not have a turnover in those final 3 games. He looked like a completely different guy. And now you're adding in more weapons. I think this is one of the sneakiest teams in the entire NFL. Yeah, our boy Hubbard was fantastic last year. We loved betting him. I personally loved betting the Panthers team total over rushing yards. It was a pretty safe bet all year. Now you bring in Rico Dowdle, who will really push the Canadian kid from behind, because Rico has only signed a 1-year deal here, SPJ. His base salary is about $2.75 million, but he can make all the way up to $7 million. So he's going to be hungry after having his breakout season, 1,000-yard season last year. So this team has all of the weapons in the world. They consistently put up over 30 points last year. Now you're adding in a potentially elite wide receiver at 6'5", and you still have Xavier Legette, who was just a first round pick last year. So this team is actually one of the sneakiest teams. This will be a team that I'm definitely turning on to watch on Sundays. The Panthers might finally be good, and I talked about this before. Internally, they definitely have been talking about all their camp competition and knowing how weak this division has been. 10 games basically guarantees you a win here. So internally, this team definitely is looking like, hey, this is our chance to finally round the corner. We've drafted everybody we need to draft. Maybe this is the time that we're finally good, knocking on the door of a wild card spot, or maybe just straight up in the playoffs.
I don't know if I'm that high on them, but I could see it maybe becoming that situation. If Bryce Young plays like he did to finish off the season and puts it together for a whole season, then that could definitely happen. They also signed J.C. Horn. They gave him a contract extension to be as the highest paid defensive back in the NFL. So we'll see if he earns that coin. He probably will. But lots of pieces on this team, as you mentioned. Could be fun in Carolina. We haven't seen Carolina be relevant since maybe Cam Newton was there.
Yeah,
it's been a bunch of mid since then, or bad. So things are starting to turn around. The vibes are definitely getting better. I will agree with you on this. I think this team's going to compete this year. I do think this team is going to compete, regardless if they get a lot of dubs. We'll see what happens, but I think they're going to be fun. They're going to be frisky to watch. Lots of wide receivers, like I said, that are going to could be some game breakers. We'll see if McMillan hits early, because that guy's got a lot of talent. So we'll find
Thielen was
out.
great with Bryce as well.
Yeah, Thielen was awesome last year. I mean, Hunter Renfrow apparently has been smoking people in camp, and that guy was incredible for the Raiders for a specific portion of time before he ended up leaving the NFL for a while. So could be a sneaky guy as well there too. Bryce Young got a lot of weapons to throw the ball to, and we'll see if that plays out for what's going to go down in Carolina this year. So. Let's close it out. Let's talk about the last team in this division. And boy, oh boy, the New Orleans Saints, 5-12 last year. Not the season they wanted. It obviously led to a bunch of changes that we'll talk about in a second. The over-under this year is set at 5.5. Kellen Moore got brought in to be the head coach of this team, takes over for Dennis Allen. Doug Newsonmeyer is going to be the offensive coordinator. He was the Eagles quarterback coach. Brandon Staley is going to be the defensive coordinator, which we all know from his days as the defensive coordinator, or excuse me, as the head coach in Los Angeles for the Chargers. And then Brandon Cooks got brought in to play some wide receiver, and Justin Reed got brought in to play safety. They drafted Kelvin Banks, the offensive tackle, and then they drafted Tyler Show, now the quarterback from Louisville. Now they lost Derek Carr, and that's the reason why they drafted Show. Derek Carr retired. He decided to not get some surgery on his neck that he needed at 34 years old. He decided to just call it a career. So shout out to Derek Carr. Marquez Valdez-Scantling has also moved on, and no Peyton Turner, the defensive end, as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to lie to you, man. I think this team possibly could be the worst team in football this year. They do have a good defense. I know they have lots of pieces on the defensive side of the football. Brandon Staley is a great defensive mind, regardless of what you think about him as a head coach. Mm-hmm. But they still have a lot of weapons. Demario Davis is no slouch as a linebacker, obviously. But the quarterback situation is just atrocious. I mean, you got a rookie who a lot of people were not very high on. You've got Spencer Rattler, who a lot of people were not very high on. And we talked about this with the Colts. You got two quarterbacks, you got no quarterbacks. And this is this bad situation for them. I could see them not being very competitive. I could see them not winning a lot of games. Maybe their defense just keeps them around because they have some dogs over there. But I mean,
it's hard. It's hard to maintain defensive intensity when you're going to have to watch the offensive side give the football back.
Putrid. Yes.
Yeah.
Just be terrible. I mean, Olave's coming back this year. We'll see if he's, has the at least even opportunity to make some plays. Alvin Kamara is still one of the best, I think, dual threat backs in the NFL, even though he's getting up there in age. But I've said this a few times when we talked about this on all of our shows, that I think Kamara could be a trade candidate if this team is 2-6, 2-7 by the time the trade deadline's getting closer by November. I could see a team that's looking to compete for a championship wants to swing in and get some stuff for Alvin Kamara and throw a couple picks at the Saints that they're going into rebuild mode. So
they might start 0-5, dude. They got a rough start to the season.
I seriously, man, I think this team might be really bad this year. Their over-under win total at 5.5. I'm definitely not touching that. If anything, I would want to take the under. I think this team could be the worst team. Like I said, they may compete for the number 1 overall pick. We joked about this a little bit too. You got Archie Manning possibly coming into the draft the following season, depending on how it shakes down with Texas this year. Obviously, with the family history with the Saints, could be fun to have Arch go play in New Orleans' new situation, and they will need a quarterback at that point, unless maybe one of these guys comes and just shows up and balls out. Maybe Rattler needed another season to put it together. Maybe Show is going to put it together too. I don't think so. I think this team's going to be bad.
So bad. Nothing to see here. It's going to be a long season in New Orleans.
Well, you can you can bookmark this video if you're watching it, and if the Saints win the division, then you can call this the worst take ever.
The Saints are going marching home.
Man, on paper, this team just does not look very good. Kellen Moore also, I like Kellen Moore as a good play caller. I think he's a good guy. Obviously, he's had a lot of success in the many stops of his career, but first time head coach, trying to create a new locker room, create a new chemistry situation, no quarterback really to go with that. The defense has got some pieces, but is it going to matter?
They had a down year last year, and now they don't really have anything to get you excited about them this year. They're just stuck in a rebuild, and it's going to be bad.
And the thing is as we know with the NFL nowadays, when it gets to the back half of the season and you're looking we ain't making the playoffs, then they're going to get to the point where they're going to be trying to get that number 1 pick. The last 4 or 5 weeks last year, it was who was going to get it: the Giants, the Titans, the Patriots, who was going to get that number 1 overall pick. And then it ended up being the Titans. But I think it could be a similar situation for these Saints. We get to the back half of the season. They're not looking very good. They haven't won a lot of games. Maybe they've been competitive some just by, the vibes or whatever. But yeah, I'm not high on this team. I think they could be the worst team of football, and we shall find out if that ends up being the case. Sorry, Saints fans, if you're listening to this. But before we tap off this video, once again, thanks for watching us. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like and a subscribe right here on YouTube. Takeaways, biggest team you're looking forward to watching. I'll just go ahead and give you, I guess, another opportunity to talk about why you're looking forward to watching the Bucs.
Yeah, I am definitely looking forward to the Bucs. All of those weapons. You got Chris Godwin's going to join the team in the second half of the season. You're going to add another Pro Bowl level player. Hopefully he can come back from that ankle injury. But I'm excited to watch 3 of the 4 teams in this division. I think it's going to be a fun year. I think that sometimes this division kind of gets hated on for the low win totals every year, but I think we got 3 frisky teams, 3 teams with good offenses, playmaking defenses. But hopefully, if the Bucs can fix all the problems that they had with their secondary last year, that they can finish atop of this division for a 5th time in a row.
I agree. I think there's going to be fun top 3. The Falcons are somebody that I'm definitely looking to watch quite a bit this year, especially for some fantasy purposes, with some guys that I'm going to target on some of my fantasy teams. But also, I think the offense could be very fun in ATL. We talked about the Panthers too. I think both of those teams are going to have some stuff to say. But this is the Bucs division to lose. The Bucs, if the Bucs play well and that roster comes out and competes the way that they have the last few years, they're going to win this division again, as they should. Again, should be some fun down in the South, even though these 2 divisions are not the highest on the totem pole. There's still going to be a lot of things to say from all 4 of these teams on both sides of the AFC and the NFC. So this is the roundup and the last video of our entire breakdown of all the divisions in the NFL. Go watch the other ones that we did of the North, the East, the West, and now you just enjoyed the South. So you're ready for football. Thanks so much for stopping by. That's Sukh Barar. Go follow him on social media at Just Sukh. Go follow myself at Sweatpant Jesus. My name is Daniel Collins. Go follow all of us at Your Betting News and get involved with all of our free content at bettingnews.com. And as I mentioned, follow us and like and subscribe this video if you like the content. And we're going to have a lot more moving forward into the NFL season and beyond. We also go live every single day right here on YouTube and on Twitch. If you want to watch some of our live shows where we give you betting angles and daily fun to give you guys the moves in the sports world and vibe out with you a little bit as well to try to win some money along the way. So come and hang out with us on our daily network every single day. And as I said, all the time, you guys come for the winners. You stay for the vibes. So it's been a pleasure doing these videos with you. Enjoy the rest of the NFL season, and we will catch you on the next one.